What's going on, gardeners? It's Sunday, October 24th, and today I'm going to show you all how to build a retractable hoop house on top of a raised bed garden.
If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing and hitting the bell to receive new video notifications, and check out our Amazon storefront and spread shop in the video description for a list of the gardening products I use and awesome custom designed apparel and other gear. Your support is greatly appreciated.
Last summer I showed you how to build a hinged hoop house on top of a raised bed garden, and I will make sure to link to that video above in case you're interested in a design like this. Well, this was very successful for me last winter. This year I'm going to move to an agricultural fabric retracting design because I have a lot of insect pressure and I'd rather have a more versatile hoop house for all year round gardening using the fabric. So that's why I'm doing this, and I will link to a video above if you want a more in-depth video about the pros and cons of this raised bed hinged hoop house design that I learned over the past year. For any of the materials that I'm using in this video, please check out my Amazon storefront linked in the video description. They are all there except for the individual conduit fittings, which you can buy at Lowe's or Home Depot in both the plumbing and the electrical aisles. You can see a full materials list right here. To build the frame of this retractable hoop house, I'll be using 1/2-inch PVC electrical conduit, and I recommend you use the electrical conduit instead of the plumbing pipe because it is UV resistant. So make sure it has that sunlight resistant or UV resistant stamp on it because it will last years longer than the plumbing pipe that is not resistant to ultraviolet radiation. And to support the conduit, we will be using these 1/2-inch 2-hole conduit straps and 1.25-inch wood screws. So we're going to start at one end of our raised bed, and we're going to start placing our first conduit straps, and we want to place the very first conduit strap right up in line with the edge of the rail, the inner edge of the rail of the raised bed. So I'm going to place that pretty far up high. That's going to be the top support, and we're going to pre-drill, and then we're going to install our screws halfway. But we don't want to install them all the way because we want a little bit of play in here to actually insert our conduit. It'll be too hard for one person to hold the conduit and install this strap, but it'll be much easier if we simply don't secure it all the way and slip it in. Now this conduit strap is going to support our outermost conduit. We're going to also install another one just below it. So we want to install another conduit just in line with this one and make sure that the metal strap end does not block this 2-hole strap right here, or else it'll stop your conduit from being installed. Now that our conduit straps have been partially secured, we're going to slip our PVC conduit into the strap. And these straps are made for EMT conduit, which is thinner walled than PVC. They still will work, but if you can find PVC conduit straps, that's even better. Now that the top of the conduit has been secured, we also need to place a strap on the bottom of the conduit before we pull the conduit to the other side of the bed, or it could snap off. Now it's very important that you place the inside conduit first, not the outside conduit, which will go here, because the inside conduit is going to be our wall for the hoop house. And quickly take note, we started securing the conduit using the standard end of the conduit first and not the wider bell end. And that's because now that that end of the conduit has been secured, we can pull this end of the conduit down and secure it by holding the 2-hole strap to it. And the bell end is much wider and will not fit over the strap. So that's why we do it the way we did it. Now we're going to secure the other end of the inner conduit. And after seeing the level of strain that this conduit is applying to the individual straps, I've elected to go with 3 per conduit and not 2. So we want to line this conduit up so it's close to the edge, but it still has enough room to fit the other outer conduit. So remember to keep that in mind. It should be equidistant to the other conduit that you just installed. Now you can see what the conduit looks like now that it's been secured to both sides of my raised bed. So now we have the inner supports of our hoop house built, and they are going to be our walls on each end of the hoop house. And we're going to use 1 ounce agricultural fabric and these 1/2 inch PVC snap clamps in order to secure the agricultural fabric to the support of the hoop house. Now my raised beds are 4 feet wide, and since the conduit straddles the outside walls of the raised bed, it's more like 4.5 feet wide that I have to actually cover with the agricultural fabric. So I'm using 5 foot wide agricultural fabric that gives me enough of a width to cover everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to center the agricultural fabric, which was folded in half, and I'm going to center that crease with the actual center point of the hoop, and then I'm going to place one of these snap clamps on here, and that's going to hold it into place. So now that the center clamp has been placed, we're going to pull the outer edge all the way over. We're going to place another clamp, and then we're going to place another clamp here, and that's going to hold everything into place on this side. And then we're going to stretch our fabric and place another clamp right here and another clamp right here. And this is going to be the outer wall of our hoop house. Now that everything is pulled nice and tight, we're going to take a utility knife and we're going to cut along the edge of the raised bed and free up this agricultural fabric because it's overhanging quite a bit. And now we have both outer walls of the hoop house up. They are well secured and they are looking nice and tight. Now that these are both constructed, we are going to begin constructing the other 3 supports. Now we're going to take some 1-inch PVC conduit and we are going to cut it 5 inches long, and we're going to do this 6 times, and this is going to be the rail system for our retractable hoop house. So I'm simply going to make a mark at exactly 5 inches, and then we're going to cut the conduit. Now I'm going to take 6 1-inch PVC conduit couplings and I'm going to pre-drill them with a 1/8 inch drill bit about 3/4 of the way up at the top. Now we're going to build the 2 PVC conduits that are going to be the 2 outer supports on our raised bed. And I have everything oriented in the exact way that I need for my supports to work properly. And the 2 outer supports are built exactly the same. They start with the 1-inch piece of PVC conduit that I cut to be 5 inches long, followed by 1 1-inch PVC coupling, of which I pre-drilled, and the pre-drill holes always face in. Then I have 3 3/4 inch to 1/2 inch conduit tees. Then I have 2 more 1-inch couplings that I pre-drilled, again with the holes facing in. And then I have, once again, another 1-inch PVC conduit that I cut to a total length of 5 inches. And when I install this on the frame, you will understand why I have them oriented in this method. Now we're going to install the 2 outer conduits on each sides of the ends of the raised bed. And remember, I already have a pre-installed conduit 2-hole strap in there. And I already have the fittings pre-placed on the conduit. So I'm simply going to slip it over and orient the conduit so the natural bend in the conduit goes that way in the direction that I'm going to bend it. And then I'm going to secure the conduit strap. So now we're going to both secure this conduit strap to hold the conduit in place, and we're also going to install 2 more conduit straps in order to permanently secure it to the raised bed. Now that this side of the conduit has been supported with 3 2-hole conduit straps, we're going to bend this down, and then we're going to support it in the exact same method. And then once this side is secured, we will do the exact same thing to the other conduit on the other side of the raised bed. And now we're going to build our center conduit support, and this one's very easy. All we're going to have is 1 piece of the 1-inch conduit that we cut to 5 inches. We have a 1-inch PVC conduit coupling, another 1-inch PVC conduit coupling, and again the pre-drilled holes are facing inward, and then we have 1 more piece of 1-inch PVC conduit that we cut to 5 inches. Now we need to measure for the center location of our center support, and just like the name gives, it's going to be in the center of our raised bed. So this is a 10-foot wide raised bed. I'm going to mark this exactly at the 5-foot mark, because that is where I'm going to install the center support. And we're going to install the center support in the exact same way that we installed all the other supports. We'll do 3 2-hole straps, bend it over, and 3 2-hole straps will go on that side to secure the rest. One thing I forgot to mention is that the inner conduit that will be the walls of your greenhouse that has the agricultural fabric snapped to it, that has to be cut 2 inches shorter than the outer conduit, because the outer conduit needs to slip just on top of the inner conduit. So I had to cut this one 2 inches shorter, and now they made up just about perfectly to the point where the outer conduit sits right on top of the inner conduit. Now the next thing that we have to do is we have to secure our 3/4 inch to 1/2 inch conduit tees to our outer hoop structure. And this is going to be what holds the shape and makes the frame somewhat sturdy. So I'm going to secure these. One will go at the exact midpoint, which I have marked here. And then I also have 2 more lines that are made that are at 16 inches. So 16 inches from here to midpoint, and then 16 inches from here to midpoint. So I'm going to secure each of those conduit tees at those locations. So the way I'm going to secure this conduit tee is as follows. I'm going to turn the conduit tee so the 1/2 inch female entrance faces outward, because this is where my lateral conduit support is going to go. And I'm going to pretty much center that right over that line that I made. Then I'm going to get underneath it and I'm going to drill the conduit tee underneath. And the reason why I'm going to drill it underneath is I'm going to have to secure it with a screw, and I do not want the screw to be on the outside where it's going to contact the agricultural fabric, because that could cause a tear. I want it to go underneath where it is never going to touch the fabric. Then I'll secure it with these small 3/4 inch screws. And now it's secure, and we will do that for the other conduit tees. Now we're going to install our lateral supports. So I'm going to take another 1/2 inch PVC conduit and I'm going to thread it under the center hoop, and I'm going to bring this all the way over to the top conduit tee, and I'm going to insert that into the conduit tee. Now we have to install the other side of the conduit to our outer conduit support. So in order to make my life easier, I have my conduit tee fitting. I already pre-drilled the outside, and I have a screw in here that's started, so it'll make my life easier when it actually comes time to support it. So I'm going to line this up right with that center line mark that I made, and then I have my conduit right here. So I need to cut this conduit, and it's important that you have the bell end side facing out here, because this is the piece that we have to cut off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark this conduit about 1 inch or so longer than so that way it'll have a little bit of room to actually plug into this conduit, the female end of this conduit tee right here. And then I'm going to cut this conduit. And then I'm going to remove the burrs. I'm going to center this conduit tee, and I'm going to plug this end of the conduit in. And I just did a walk around and everything is good with the structure. Now I'm going to center this conduit right over this permanent marker line that denotes the halfway mark, and I'm going to install it. And now that is permanently affixed. So I'm going to do that to my other 2 supports on each side as well. Now we need to secure these lateral conduit supports over to the hoops that go across our raised beds. So I'm going to simply use electrical tape to do that. As you can see, I already have this one and that one done. So all we're going to do is we're going to bring this conduit support, we're going to bring them into a cross and make sure that they're roughly level. So we're going to eyeball this and make sure it's as straight as possible. Then we are going to start placing the electrical tape, and we are going to wrap it diagonally, and then we're going to change directions, and we're going to go around this way, and we're basically going to crisscross it over and over a couple of times, and that right there is going to hold everything in place. Now that the hoop house frame construction is complete, we need to start building the retraction mechanism. So if you recall, we have this 1 inch piece of PVC conduit that's 5 inches long plugged into this 1 inch conduit. What we're going to do is we are going to take this conduit, the conduit coupling, and we are going to plug that into this 3/4 inch conduit T, because that will fit in there perfectly. And if you also recall, we have it pre-drilled on the bottom here. So I'm going to secure this conduit coupling to the PVC pipe, just like that. And this is going to be part of our retraction mechanism, because this right here is going to slide up and down. So we're going to do this to all 4 corners of our hoop house. Now that all of the retractable pieces have been secured on the end posts, we need to also do the same thing for this center post. So what I did was, I have a screw that I pre-drilled and started on this coupling. I'm going to separate this piece of conduit that I cut from the coupling, and I did that on all the other parts as well. And then I'm going to turn this screw to the back, and I'm going to secure it right underneath this lateral conduit support. So now that is permanently installed, and we are ready to install our agricultural fabric. And to use as a greenhouse cover, I'm going to use this 10-foot wide floating row cover. It's 0.9 ounces in weight, so it's almost a full ounce, and it's also 50 feet long. So I can do several hoop houses with this. I'm only going to need probably about 10 or 11 feet worth of it for this one. So I'm going to pull this out of the bag. Now the wind is really fighting me today, unfortunately. So in order to get a head start and try to beat the wind, I'm going to pull this row cover a few inches over, and I'm going to use these 1/2-inch snap clamps to hold it in place. And then I will fiddle with it later to get the final placement. Now our floating row cover is in place, and it is secured up at the top with those 1/2-inch conduit clamps. Now we need to secure it to the sides. And this is the key to the entire retraction mechanism that I designed in my own mind. And that is right here, this 1-inch, 5-inch long piece of conduit that we custom cut. We are going to use a 1-inch conduit clamp to secure this fabric to this, and that is going to be the retraction mechanism. So we're going to pull this nice and tight, and we're going to bring this piece of conduit all the way down to the bottom, as far as it can go. So we're going to pull it tight, we're going to get some tension in there, and we are going to snap this snap clamp at the bottom. But we are going to leave a little bit of room up at the top, because when we slide this up like this piece of conduit is going to plug into that conduit coupling that we installed in here, and that's going to hold it up for us so we can have a retractable hoop house. So basically all you're doing is you're plugging conduit into the conduit coupling, and it holds. So now we're going to lower this conduit back down, and I'm going to do the same with these 1-inch PVC couplings, or with these 1-inch PVC snap clamps. I'm going to connect them to the other pieces of conduit that we custom cut. Now that our hoop house cover has been installed and completely secured, I just need to trim off all of the excess, and there's plenty here to do another 3, maybe even 4 raised beds. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take a pair of scissors, and I'm going to cut the fabric. And that right there is what just might be the best retractable hoop house for a raised bed garden on the entire internet. And I can tell you right now, I already prefer this design to my hinged hoop house, because not only is it a lot easier to build and a lot cheaper to build, I don't have to deal with that big heavy lid. I'm not going to suffer with winds blowing it shut as much, and it's more versatile, because that thick plastic is really only good for the winter time, but this 1-ounce fabric, this can be used all year long, because not only will it protect the tomatoes under here from frosts for a few weeks until it gets really cold, but it will also be usable to protect against things like insects in the spring and things like sun scald in the summer when it gets really hot, because it'll provide some element of shade protection as well. And the coolest thing about this is, when it comes time to close it, all I have to do is just pull the supports down, and they pop right out just like that. And just like that, the hoop house is closed. I'm very excited to have this, because I think I will get a lot of mileage out of this 365 days a year. And now we'll do one final walk around so you can see how the final design came out. Overall, I'm really happy with it. And like I mentioned before, I think this is greatly superior to this hinged hoop house design. You can see how beat up this thing is from the wind. The plastic just catches all the wind like a sailboat. This fabric will not do that. This fabric will let some of the air through. It will also let some of the rain through. And I won't have to run out in the middle of the day, every single day, and vent it because it will let the hot air out. Even in the middle of January, my hinged hoop house was getting to be over 100 degrees in there. So this is going to save me a lot of time and a lot of energy. And that right there is how you build a retractable hoop house for a raised bed garden. Now, as always, with all of these DIYs that I show you, this is just a general blueprint. Feel free to take the method that I used here and customize it for your own unique application. Just adjust the sizes for your raised bed or for your bed spacing, or adjust the fabric covering or adjust the conduit sizes for your unique conditions. For my conditions, I think this is pretty good for what I'm aiming for. So everybody, thank you so much for watching today's video. If you found it helpful, please make sure to hit that like button and pound that notification bell. That way you get notified when we upload more videos like these. If you're curious about any of the products that I used in this video or in my garden in general, they are all linked down below in my Amazon storefront, and check out my spread shop for merch while you're there. Thanks again so much for watching, and I hope to see all of you again on the next video.
Dale, did you chew up my wrapping paper? Did you chew up my wrapping paper? Is there any evidence? Is there any evidence? That's bad, Dale. Bad. Bad.
You can't prove it with me.
Bad.
You can't prove it.
Bad. No.
I have constitutional rights and you're innocent until proven guilty.
You little stinker.
Innocent until proven guilty.
Hands up. Hands up.
He's surrendering.
Hands up.
Don't shoot.